This video is sponsored by Card Kingdom. If you click on the link in the description below, it'll take you to their store and they'll know I sent you there. Hi everyone, I'm Hone, and it's Monday, so that means it's time for another MTG Top 10, the series where I rank cards based on their historical performance and Magic's highest level of competition. You might be saying, wait, don't MTG Top 10s come out on Wednesday and Friday? And you would be right, that's how it's been for years. But because I recently started my new deck history series, I moved things around a little bit. And now we'll be having MTG Top 10s every Monday and Friday and a deck history video on Wednesday. Anyway, Modern Horizons 2 preview season is well underway, and we are of course seeing a return of a lot of old mechanics and some modern legal reprints of old cards. One of these cards is Extruder, which comes with Echo. This card was originally printed in Urza's Destiny, and Urza's block was the first place we ever saw the Echo mechanic. I think it is actually a pretty fascinating mechanic because obviously it is all downside. Having to pay a mana cost on your next turn to keep a permanent in play is pretty rough. However, the way Echo has been utilized has actually resulted in some pretty powerful cards. Cards with Echo are sometimes super efficient, and the Echo downside keeps it from being too good, or it has some kind of immediate effect that you get whether you pay the Echo cost or not. Extruder is an example of this because you can sacrifice itself to its ability for a counter, in addition to having a 4-mana 4/3 that could block for 1 round in combat. As I said, Echo made its debut in Urza's block, and we've seen it return in Time Spiral block, the first Modern Horizons, and now Modern Horizons 2. In all, there are 50 cards with Echo, and in this video we'll look at the 10 that have left the biggest impact on competitive Magic. Before we get started, here's a quick reminder on how I score cards in these videos. A top 8 at a Pro Tour, Players Tour, Mythic Championship, Mythic Invitational, Legacy, or Vintage Championship is worth 2 points, and a top 8 at a Grand Prix or Magic Fest is worth 1 point. At number 10, it is Uras Blueprints, which is pretty clunky. You have to pay a total of 12 mana for it if you want it to stick around, and that's pretty rough. Still, it does do something pretty powerful. Tapping to draw a card is pretty sweet. It gained all of its points in extended Tinker decks, which were largely focused on cheating big ol' artifacts into play or assembling a bunch of artifacts to lock the opponent out of the game, or maybe put together some artifact-based value engine. Basically, it was an artifact toolbox deck. Uras Blueprints was part of one of those value engines, as it could be tinkered into play, at which point you only had to pay 6 once. You could also combine it with Voltaic Key to draw a whole bunch of cards. Blueprints doesn't have any points since 2003, and new Echo cards are likely to displace it at some point. At number 9, it is Scourger. On the face of it, this is super efficient. It's a 2-mana 2/2 that bounces something when it enters. That is an incredible card. But obviously it has Echo, and quite an expensive one. One so expensive that if you play this on turn 2, you probably won't be able to play the Echo cost on turn 3. However, it does give this creature some flexibility. It's one that can interact with the board after all. Scourger has gained all of its points in Legacy Goblins, where it is often played as a singleton copy to be searched up by Goblin Matron. The deck also runs Goblin War Chief, which also means you can cast it more cheaply and attack with it right away, which makes it even more awesome. The bounce effect is extra good in Legacy 2 since many decks in the format seek to cheat big things into play. Still, Legacy Goblins hasn't really been a thing in a while, and Scourger hasn't gained any points as a result. At number 8, it is Mog War Marshall, another Time Spiral block Goblin with Echo. Mog War Marshall gives you some pretty good value for the mana. The turn it comes down, you get the 1/1 Marshall and a 1/1 Goblin, and even if you don't pay the Echo cost, you get another 1/1 Goblin. If you need to go wide, this is a pretty nice way to do it. Mog War Marshall was played in red-green aggro decks in block and in goblin decks in Legacy. At number 7, I've included 2 cards, Pouncing Jaguar and Albino Troll. I put them together here because they were both played in the exact same decks. In other words, every deck that Pouncing Jaguar was in, Albino Troll was also in. These are both examples of highly efficient cards with Echo. Pouncing Jaguar is a 1-mana 2/2. With Echo, you do end up paying 2 mana total, but you get to pay it in installments, and that's not too shabby. Meanwhile, Albino Troll is a 2-mana 3/3 that can regenerate, and while paying 4 mana total for that isn't amazing these days, it was pretty good at the time. Both the Troll and the Jaguar were played in mono-green aggro decks in Urza's block and Standard. At number 5, it is Ring of Gixx. It has the same score as Pouncing Jaguar and Albino Troll, but a higher average finish, so I gave it the tiebreaker. Ring of Gixx is an artifact that it can allow you to pay a single mana to tap down an artifact, creature, or land. However, it is kind of clunky at doing that stuff, given that you have to pay 6 mana for it to stick around. Still, you do it over 2 turns, and it does have the flexibility of being able to tap something down right away, even if you maybe don't want to pay the Echo on your next turn. Ring of Gixx gained all of its points at Pro Tour New York in 1999, where the format was Urza's block constructed. The format had a number of really powerful artifact decks, and while there was some variation, they were all largely built around abusing cards like Tolarian Academy and Tinker. These decks tended to have plenty of mana for a card like the Ring, and it could get searched up at an opportune time too. Ring of Gixx doesn't have any points since 1999. At number 5, it is Raven Familiar. This is another Echo creature that has an Enter the Battlefield ability. In this case, you have a pretty powerful draw a card effect because of the card selection. 3 mana for a 1/2 flyer with that Enter the Battlefield ability is great. With a card like this, it isn't unusual to just not pay the Echo after getting the value out of it. One really nice thing about Echo creatures, by the way, is that you can always use them to block before your turn, and while that will often amount to a chump block, it does help a card like this give you some more value, and certainly makes it seem worth it. Anyway, Raven Familiar was played in artifact-heavy block constructed decks where it did a good job of helping you find your Tolarian Academy or other much-needed powerful card. It's also gained points in extended Alurin decks. These decks seek to combo off with a powerful enchantment. The plan is ultimately to combo off in a variety of ways by constantly playing Cavern Harpy and bouncing other stuff. If you didn't have what you needed to actually combo off, it was no problem, because you could just constantly play the Familiar, then bounce it when you played the Harpy, then play the Familiar again, then play the Harpy again, and so forth, until you found whatever card you needed to just win the game. Alurin is still around these days in Legacy, but Raven Familiar didn't make the leap, and it hasn't been played anywhere since 2005. At number 4, it is Bone Shredder, another Echo creature with a strong Into the Battlefield ability. In this case, you get to cast Terror on something. That's already not a bad deal for 3 mana, especially since it can block for a turn for free, so the ability to pay the Echo is in some ways just upside here. The prevalence of artifacts and black creatures in both Standard and Block meant it didn't see much play there, but it did find significant success in Extended, where it was usually played as a tutorable singleton copy. At first, it appeared in mono-black Reanimator decks, where it was played as a singleton copy to be searched up with Entomb or Vampiric Tutor, if you really needed a removal spell. After that, it found its way into Alurin decks alongside Raven Familiar, but it only appeared in the sideboard as a card to grab with Living Wish. Still, it worked quite well with Cavern Harpy and Alurin, since it could allow you to kill all of your opponent's stuff for no mana at all. It also plays a similar role in Legacy Alurin. It was also played in some other Legacy toolbox decks, like Salvager decks that ran Living Wish and Recurring Survival decks which ran Survival of the Fittest. It doesn't have any points since 2015, but it wouldn't be super weird for it to gain some more points in the future. At number 3, it is Ticking Gnomes. This is both a pretty efficient creature and a card that can give you some value even if you don't want to pay the Echo cost. As a 3 mana 3/3, it was pretty impressive in 1999, and the ability to sacrifice itself to deal 1 damage to anything is pretty sweet. This was especially true because of a plethora of X1s around in both Urza's block constructed and Standard, and because it was an artifact, it was even easier to tutor up. It was played in Urza's block constructed artifact decks and in standard mono-black mid-range decks. At number 2, it is Crater Hellion, one of my favorite cards ever. As I've said numerous times, Urza's Saga is when I started playing, and this was one of my first rares. The cool effect it had and the awesome art captivated 11-year-old me. Anyway, Crater Hellion has a super powerful Into the Battlefield ability that sweeps away all creatures with 4 or less toughness. This means it can have a very big impact on the game, even if you can't pay the 6 mana for the Echo on your next turn. It was sometimes well worth paying though, especially if your opponent didn't manage to add to the board at all in their turn, as keeping a 6/6 around after that 4 damage effect is a big deal. The Hellion was super powerful in Urza's block constructed. It appeared in 6 of the top 8 decks at Pro Tour New York in 1999. It was also played in various extended decks that could cheat it into play. It gained 4 different top 8s at extended Premier events in 3 different decks. 2 utilized Oath of Druids, another used Sneak Attack, and the other was a Reanimator deck. And at number 1, it is Avalanche Riders, another one of my favorite cards. This isn't one that I liked when I was a kid, but I played land destruction decks in extended in the mid-2000s, and this guy was key. Anyway, it's an invitational card, which means that it was designed by the winner of an invitational tournament. Part of the prize in those days meant you got to help design a card that would feature your likeness, and Avalanche Riders comes from Darwin Castle. This 4-mana 2/2 with haste blows up a land, which is a pretty awesome deal, and it makes sure you get something out of it even if you can't pay the Echo cost, and often you don't. It gained some points in Urza's block constructed, largely as a result of the fact that Tolarian Academy decks made up most of the metagame, and being able to blow up an opposing Academy was a big deal. It also received a reprint in Time Spiral as a time-shifted card. It was played in Time Spiral block constructed, where it was played in a mono-red aggro deck and in a wild pair combo deck. The deck contained a lot of 2/2s, so you could basically tutor up the rider when you felt like you needed one. In Standard, it only gained points the first time around, in particular in mono-red land destruction and red-green aggro decks. It is legal in Modern thanks to its time-shifted reprint, and it has gained some points there as a result. It used to be played in Birthing Pod decks, which were all about having toolbox creatures like Avalanche Riders, because you could search it up whenever you needed to destroy a problem land, like the Tron lands. It has also been played in Living In decks, where it's pretty sweet to play it early to blow up a land and then get it back with Living In later in the game, which will let you nuke another land, of course. The Riders don't have any points since 2017, but for now their position on top of this list seems pretty secure. So those are the 10 cards with Echo that have left the biggest impact on competitive Magic. If you want to own any of these cards, you can find a direct link for each of them in the description that will take you right to the Card Kingdom store. If you enjoyed this video, please like it and share it so that others can enjoy it too. If you want to make sure you catch future videos, please subscribe and turn on notifications. And if you want to catch up on the over 360 other MTG Top 10s I've already done, you should see a playlist on your screen shortly. Thanks for watching.